Oh, the Vans Digital Triple Crown of Surfing is underway and it is going nuts. The waves have been absolutely pumping in Hawaii. We are in the midst of the 4 weeks that the event is running from December 21st to January 21st. And of course, it's at the 3 historic surf venues that the Triple Crown has been running at for years. The Vans Hawaiian Pro at Haleiwa, the Vans World Cup of Surfing at Sunset Beach, and of course the Vans Pipe Masters at the Bonsai. And this year, for the Digital Vans Triple Crown, they'll be awarding individual event titles and an overall Vans Triple Crown Series champions. Submissions are now live. They're being updated daily, so you can tune in at vanstriplecrownofsurfing.com. I love the way they've laid out their site this year. It's easy to see the scoring. It's easy to see the rides. It's easy to see what happens on a day-to-day. And then they have a constant tabulation of who's in the lead. And go check it out. vanstriplecrownofsurfing.com. Follow along at vanstriplecrownofsurf on Instagram and watch the submissions daily as the swells hit the reefs. They get published that same day. Vans is also excited to partner with the North Shore Community Land Trust for the 2001 Digital Vans Triple Crown of Surfing. And having worked with them for many years, it's really a key environmental partner for the Vans Triple Crown of Surfing. The North Shore Community Land Trust strives to protect, steward, and enhance the natural landscapes, cultural heritage, and rural character of Ahupuas from Kahuku Point to Kaena on the North Shore of Oahu. The North Shore Community Land Trust was founded by a grassroots group of community members in 1997 as a nonprofit organization concerned with protecting and restoring the scenic beauty of the North Shore, which, if you've ever been to the North Shore or really just anywhere in nature that is yet to be developed, you see the value of this exact thing. So we are thrilled for this land trust to exist, and I think that they're a fantastic partner for Vans. So the North Shore Community Land Trust and their partners have raised over $75 million towards the perpetual protection of over 4,000 acres of North Shore land. This helps secure the rural character of the North Shore for future generations. This is a fantastic thing, and you can learn more about it at northshoreland.org. And of course, go check out vanstriplecrownofsurfing.com. I'm just going to read something to you, and then I will let you respond.
All right. Did I just get out of your
No,
zone?
that's actually even better.
Okay.
And, all right. As some of you have noticed, I've been absent from social media for the first time since I signed up 10 years ago. Life, but more so incredible people, presented me with a very unexpected opportunity of a lifetime. I decided to use what's become the last 8 months for self-betterment. While every day I've considered myself the luckiest human in the world, days like this video pointed directly towards the luckiest surfer in the world. Last year was the longest year of my life. While pinned at home from the pandemic protocols, riddled with fear of how to survive a new lifestyle, I thought it was to be my new direction in life. I've been most grateful to be guided back to who I am and what truly makes me happy. The process has shown I still have work to do on letting go of areas I've never been proud of. But I've found comfort and happiness realizing there's never been a need to let go of me. My favorite daily self-improvement work has included diet, alcohol consumption, insomnia, anxiety and depression, and exercise outside of surfing. I want to sincerely thank everyone who's allowed this pivotal journey to unfold. I never imagined at 35, after all I've experienced with my prior surf career, that the best time of my life was yet to come. The main goal now is to continue these newly learned aspects moving forward. One of the standouts will be staying out of my own way. Worrying about the future is toxic. It's true, we never know what amazing experience life has around the corner. Keep the faith and keep great company. To be continued. Tell me more. Tell me, where did that all come from?
Oh, that's funny. One of the things that I dislike the most is listening to myself talk, or apparently now hearing my inner thoughts read aloud.
So, I'm not the best reader either.
So thank you. No, that was cool. That was my conscious speaking. So that was a trip for me. Yeah, gosh, my journey has been a trip. It's a long story, but I'm going to try to keep it short because all I do is talk too much, David.
Okay.
That came from nearing the end of a 8-month journey to Fiji that was meant to be a 14-day trip, which turned into 282 days. And now I'm back home in Los Angeles. And it's interesting because it's beginning to sink in. I'm like 3 weeks since I've been home. And yeah, it was a fantasy that I didn't actually ever fantasize or could imagine. There's so much within what I just said to you. It's kind of like, where do you want me to start? Because what I was getting at there was, what are we on, a 2-year journey now with COVID?
Yeah.
And when COVID hit, I had created angles of personal business that were really centered around passion. And so I had surf guiding, which I'll call it, creating surf trips and having up to 6 people sign up and taking them to places that I really enjoy for your average level surfer, not Chopu and Cloudbreak. And all, people were like, I can't go where you go. I took my ego out of it because I really have learned that I enjoy sharing my surf knowledge over the years and trying to better people's technique and ability, but then also trying to be a host on a trip of creating a level of fun to share what I think is the greatest thing in the world, which is surf travel. And then I was doing public speaking at mostly high school and middle schools, and I have a surf therapy grief group. And those 3 angles, although the surf therapy is all volunteer, the other 2 were business, ways of income. They all ended overnight because of COVID. I was gathering people was the main thing. Right. And I didn't realize, like, wow, that's what I really like to do in life, apparently, is get people together. So I rented my home out, which I saw you at last, moved into my parents' home that I grew up in about 20 minutes away, and settled into lockdown. You know, here in Los Angeles, they closed our beaches. I don't watch the news. My parents do. I found myself one day just literally gripping the chair, like with fear and anxiety, like worried of going outside. I got it. It came over me. And I actually reached out to you because I was so upset at all the media. I wanted to put something good out on the internet and decided to create a podcast. But you don't realize that podcasts are like super technical, especially dealing with technology, which I suck at. That's when I hit you up. I'm like, dude, how do you do this? And you were cool. You actually gave me a couple hours worth of knowledge. So I created a podcast, and I was doing one a week, which was awesome. But then I realized I was spending around 10 hours doing these podcasts, which were for fun. You know, it was A, to get out of my head and start doing like better critical thinking, because I was living in that wild fear and anxiety, and it sucked. And then I wanted to put out good stuff online, which we needed more positivity. It seemed like everything was just so gnarly. But then I realized that I was in my first month ever of no income. So while I really enjoyed creating the podcast, it was really cool. But once again, it was this volunteer work that I was spending a lot of time on. And I had to like seriously look myself in the mirror and go like, dude, you need to make some money. So when the beaches opened back up, surfing a bunch like everybody else to get back to our mental dojo, which surfing is so good at curing. And all the kids were there, whole new onslaught of kids. You know, I haven't been home in a long time, and I was home. And there's a whole new generation. And I was like, I should just start coaching these kids. So I started doing local surf coaching. And me being the person that has to like overdo everything, I tried to just build as much as I could. And I was doing 3 to 4 surf lessons a day. I mean, some of them were people, it was moms that got word of mouth, and I was pushing their kids in their first wave ever, like after school. Crazy. Which was rad. It's really fun watching people ride their first wave, but it was like, it was work. And 3 months into it, doing 3 to 4 lessons a day, it was rad. I'd built up 100 people. But it was interesting because I wasn't really getting to enjoy what I loved most, which was my own personal time of surfing. And I found myself showing up to the beach kind of looking at it as like work, which is great. My surfing has been everything, and a big part of it was work. But this was like really removed. And I just, one day I showed up with a bit of dread to the beach. And I'm like, this is not why I love to surf. And while I love to hustle and there is a business here, it's fantastic. Like I was beginning to really think like, is this what you want to do? Thought about maybe creating a surf school because they crush it. Then I realized there's no permits available. Like in the LA area, they come up every 5 years and it's a bidding war. It rarely goes to surf camps of people who actually surf. I was calling them daycares. It's a great place for people working to safely drop their kids off at the school, but it's like not the betterment of somebody surfing. And I was just I was confused at the direction I was really going to go with this whole surf coaching. I think what it did incredibly for me was there's something to, I think, acting upon your thoughts. And I enjoyed the surf guiding. I love traveling to surf still as a way to make a living taking these people on surf trips. The gnarly day-to-day hustle of being a surf coach was debatable. I felt like maybe I wasn't getting to use my actual like knowledge, and I think that's what was beginning to get to me. Like it wasn't consuming my critical thinking enough. You know, it's really fun to learn how to teach people and learn what it is for each person that ticks. Everybody learns differently. So even though you've done something for 25 years, it may take 5 different ways of saying or explaining something to a surfer before it actually clicks. And like, that's what I get off on. I love playing with the critical thinking and getting across to somebody like everybody looks at waves so differently. And it's really cool, actually. It's fun to learn that it's not just the way I perceive a wave. It's how can I manipulate what I know to your ability and the way you look at surfing. So that's a tangent on its own. But what that did was I got a phone call. Was this in March? From a guy that I'd met on Tavarua when I was a boatman there 2 years prior. And he's like, hey, we found a loophole and we're going to Namotou in Fiji for 2 weeks. And the first thing that crossed my mind was, well, the country's closed. Like no one could get in there. And people weren't really talking about it because no media was coming out of it. It was like this kind of thing that was going on that everyone had forgotten about. But when COVID hit, there were 2 places that I would have, I don't know if you fantasized about where you wish you were. Oh, yeah. The first was I had an invite to go to Mexico with Mark Rico and Tom Curran to Punta Conejo. Like they were going down there to get stuck. They knew the lockdown was going, but I was in the middle of renting my home out and I just couldn't get it rented in time. And I don't know if you guys saw that free scrubber, but I could have been there. and I missed it, but I had to do that. Like to survive, I had to get my monthly nut covered of my mortgage and everything that breaks down owning a home. So I missed that and I was kicking myself and I was hitting them up like every swell, which was not the smartest thing. It drove me insane. The second place was there was a photographer, Scott Weinerova on Tavarua, and I knew that he was there and I was hitting him up on swells. I'm like, that was my second place that I wish, like, where else would you want to be in a lockdown place? Well, empty Cloudbreak. You're like, God, that would be amazing. Like I literally dreamed about that. So when my friend asked if I wanted to go, I was like, yeah, that sounds insane. 14 days on Namotou. He's like, well, the really cool thing is we chartered the entire Fiji Airways. It's 30 of us. We're going to see if we can make you 31. You have to get your COVID test. I need it by the end of today. Can you get your 3-day COVID test? I'm like, dude, I will do anything I can to make this happen. I hadn't traveled in a year. I'd been here at home for a year, and so I hadn't done the nose swab. I didn't even know how to go about it. And that was the conversation. He's like, just get me your thing. We're going to leave in 3 days, and we'd love to have you. I was like, holy crap. I went to my friend who's a doctor on the street. I was like, can you get me this thing? Like so freaked out, stressed out. Got the test came back, showed up, boarded an empty Fiji Airways flight and sat in business class for the first time because you could sit wherever you wanted. They had chartered the whole plane. We landed. I think there was like 5 employees at the airport. They opened the airport for us. And we got out of the airport. It was the strangest thing ever. I thought that I was like in a zombie land. This police car escorted us all the way through Nandi town to Denarau. And we were blowing through every red light. And it seemed like we were like, we should have had hazmat suits on or something. Because it was gnarly. The bus driver was driving crazy and it was like surreal. It's like, this is insane, actually. So just when we landed, it was a crazy experience. And we got to Namotou, and that was a 14-day trip. It was epic. I got to, help people surf and also do my little guiding around the area that is my favorite place to visit in the world. And right towards the end of the trip, Fiji had its real first spike of COVID. I think they had 5 cases in the year prior. For whatever reason, Fiji hadn't really had COVID run through it. And whispers started happening, and then it came on the news. Like, kind of, hey, prepare yourself, we're going to lock down. And they canceled our flight to go home. There was these cargo planes. That's what we got in. They called them cargo planes because Fiji still was getting supplies in, but they weren't allowing passengers. So the cargo plane to leave was canceled. I had 3 weeks booked at Punta Conejo with 18 surfers for my surf guiding. And it was to be like the beginning of my more normal life starting again. And I had to make a decision right then and there out of fairness to them that I might not be able to come back. Like the way that I timed it, I was going to land for one day and then go down to Mexico and do 3 weeks of 6 surfers each week. And I had already been paid for, like everyone was signed up. It was all a go. And so I had to kind of just make this mature decision and figure it out. So I thought in my head, I was like, man, I don't think I'm going to make it. And I can't play this game of, hey, I may or may not make it and send these people down to a resort without me. It's called the Alex Gray Surf Experience. But Alex Gray wasn't going to be there.
It's bad for business.
I thought it was terrible for business, especially a new business.
Yeah.
But it was what it was. So I called my buddy Timmy Reyes. He's always down to go somewhere. And then Greg Long was in Porto. And so I figured if I couldn't be there, I'd replace myself with people that I thought were amazing, if not even cooler than me. And these guys aren't going to get Alex Gray, but they're still going to get the professional surfer and guys that have been to the area to take them, to the little spots, navigate the crowds, know the tides, all the stuff that people want when they have a guide with them. Plus just have cool energy and fun stories. So Timmy was a yes, Greg was a yes, and I called 18 people personally sitting on this island. And I had 17 out of 18 guys say, dude, it's all good. Like, we wish it was you, but, everybody had been trapped. Mexico was one of the only countries open. Surfers wanted to travel. That's an amazing destination. I felt horrible because I've never done that before. Like, I'm one of those people, when I say something, I commit. And if I commit, like, I will show up. I've always tried to be that person. This was one of the instances where I had to, let it go and was like, dude, I'm stuck in Fiji. Those guys figured out, I think everybody had to stay an extra week, and we were stuck on Namotou, and then they finagled a way out and got a cargo plane to go. With my relationship with Tavarua, they knew that I was there, and they were like, hey dude, you shouldn't leave. And I was like, really? They're like, you're here. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It looks like the country's going to continue to lock down. The only people who could actually get in, they did for tourism, they created a blue lane for sailboats. And if you did a 14-day crossing, they considered it a quarantine and would allow you in the country. So I wasn't the only surfer in the country. There were yachties. And then some, of course, the residents. You had your local rippers there. But I was kind of an anomaly, especially because I got in on a plane. That was in a league of its own. Yeah. And thank you so much, Tavarua, for seeing where I was, what was unfolding, and I guess it was so cool. I mean, speaking to John Roseman, he's like, dude, you have to stay there for all of us. Like, we need one of us to experience it. This is going to be history. The managers couldn't get in. They wouldn't even allow work permit people in. They just went really severe and closed. And so this is how everything continued to unfold. And when I talk about staying out of your own way, it was hard to let go of those trips. I appreciate all of you who still continue to go down to the resort on the Alex Gray Surf experience. You know, I got good feedback. They had a good time, but that was weird. But for whatever reason, it was like the universe kept conspiring to keep me there. And this once in a lifetime opportunity that for the 14 days I thought was already the coolest thing ever began to morph into like, oh my God, I think I'm going to experience history here as a surfer. Something that's never happened before. And over the 8 months, there were moments that kind of was like, oh, I think I'm actually going to leave. You know, kind of once a month, there was a moment like, oh, the country's going to open up, as all the governments have been saying, you know, but they don't really know what they were doing. I never thought that it was going to go 8 months. I don't think any of us that were there did. We were hoping we would get a month or two at the peak season at what I consider the most coveted wave in the world, which is Cloudbreak to me, and restaurants and all the other waves too. It was like when it first started happening, I was just losing it. And yeah, I took a break from social media. Like, there was this feeling that something was happening to me personally that I didn't for once need to share every moment of. I think respectfully out of others who didn't get this crazy opportunity that I got as well, I almost felt that it could come off as like, you know, people, I didn't want to be that person experiencing this incredible thing while there was some hardships going on that I knew about. So it's kind of like I just removed myself from, I think, an area that could bring negativity, which is social media. And it was the strangest thing for me because, I don't know, 10 years of my life, 8 of those years I posted every single day. Like, I think I'm almost over 3,000 posts. I've realized this, but I didn't completely. Like, I've shared my life publicly for a long time. Although a lot of it was that surf-oriented thing, and I was starting to get tired of it, which is that, like, hey, look at me. My life's amazing. Everything I do is rad. Yeah. Check out this surf photo. If you're in a career, you're foolish not to play the game. I mean, there's a lifestyle in there. There's sponsorships. That's what you're supposed to do, brand yourself. But as I've fallen away from my career, it's about 3 years now past it, like, there's been these big, like, moments where I'm like, of acceptance. And I think a part of it was social media and not living or not producing, in a sense, a false life. I think you can curate whatever life you want, and people could get out of a career but still make people think they're still, like, doing it. Yeah. And I just got tired of it, and I kind of got tired of the, like, look at me thing and that instant need of look at me. So it was like this life thing happened where I was already going down this path of wanting a break from what was me. And I've been really trying to settle into I don't know, you ever been pushed in life where you're holding on to a bit of you, you're scared to let go of it? Yeah. And all of a sudden I got to Fiji, and life is like, it was like I got this push of like, hey bud, like, you're removing yourself completely now. We're going to put you on an island. You're going to isolate yourself, be on an island with not too many people that's closed. There's going to be a lot of loneliness, isolation, reflection, and kind of like one of the things I'm worst at, or I'm bad at in life, is stillness. And when you're on an island that you can walk around in 10 minutes, you gotta learn how to have peace during the still moments. So I nobody really knew that I was there, and I'm kind of just starting to talk about it now, and yeah, it was crazy during this fantasy trip. I mean, it's I think the greatest moment of my life for sure when you mix in surfing, having waves like Cloudbreak to yourself, but then also this moment of like facing yourself and actually working, like those moments where I say, you know, things that I wasn't proud of. I think a lot of movement for me allows me to run from the pieces of myself that maybe I continue to carry on. They don't show up as much as they used to. I do feel like I've been doing work, but there's still those immature like reaction moments where that temper's still there. Whatever it is, jealousy, these things where I'm like, I still haven't gotten over that, you know, like that's crazy. Yeah, so I just sank into it.
We're sharing a mic today. I wish I had my own. I had a million questions in the middle of all of that, but you're good at vamping.
I went too far.
No, you didn't at all.
Sorry.
No, continue to. I don't mean to discourage you from that at all. So I have a ton of questions, but I'll start here. Not a lot of people, you kind of alluded to, aside from the house, you were in a position where you could go somewhere. Aside from the house and I guess the surf camp, you were in a time in your life where you could go isolate for a period of time. Not a lot of people have that opportunity, I suppose. Everybody would find or come up with 100 anchors that kept them at home. Did you have to sacrifice any relationships to be there?
Well,
that's the number one thing that most people would.
Well, I totally understand. You had me laughing when you brought up the word relationship, because it's an interesting place in life to be 35 and not be in a relationship at all, nor on a path to one. And I think at times, I guess at this point I struggle, you know, like my parents are getting older. My dad will be 70 next year. And there's this piece, like I've always thought about having a family, and I have amazing parents. And a big component is like, I'd love my parents to have grandkids in their lifetime. Like we're just one of those families that I know that would be rad. I actually got this like affirmation that I was where I was meant to be because of what you just brought up. I was one of very few people who, even if given the chance, could say yes, because if I had a family, people to provide for, a not so understanding relationship, hey, I'm going to stay in Fiji for 8 months. It's the greatest thing of all time for me. I don't think many women would quite understand that.
No.
Bless them for anyone that's had to deal with me in the past.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was rad you brought that up, because that is something that I reflected on, and it's something that actually gave me like a little bit of peace within that subject, because I've always believed that there is a bigger power at work. I don't have a name for it. It's interesting. Every night when I went to go to bed, there was a turn on the island, and I would sit and say thank you. Like I just look up in the sky and I'd say thank you to someone. Of course, there were the people in play that were allowing me to do this, and I could thank them personally. But there was just, I don't know, this life has moments, and I'm like, there's more going. This is too good. And I found myself actually thanking my brother a lot, which was really cool. I go through phases where I speak to him like outwardly. They're seldom. It's not as much. I'm not as much of that person, but like I found, I just had crazy amounts of gratitude because every day I knew could be my last day, because we were living from the cases, you know, and if Fiji got a hold of the spike and begin to taper it down, then, you know, they're a country that lives off of tourism, not completely, but it's a big part. And respectfully so, they wanted to get their economy back up. So I literally, every day that I was there, I'd wake up, and although some days, especially the week-long runs of wind and no surf, were a little harder, it was pretty easy to wake up on this island and just know how lucky I was and make the most of it, knowing that it was temporary.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, at the end of every day, I just felt like I was like, every day was a win. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I'm somebody that has chased their dreams, that has set goals, very driven to meet them, and kind of stayed in my lane. A lot of fear of like outside variables, be it relationships, drug and alcohol addiction. I think lust for money. I think those three things are something that can derail a professional athlete or anybody with a dream. So when you bring that up, that's actually a big piece that I'm going through right now. And to end your question there was that I was in a position selfishly to be able to just stay on. And that was a big component.
Yeah. I think a lot of what you're talking about, that restlessness that you've grown up feeling, or wanting to run away from things or keep moving, is the plight of living in Los Angeles, kind of, and those things that you're talking about chasing, I feel like it's similar to, it's living in Los Angeles. People who grow up on a farm don't necessarily feel those same ways. Mm-hmm. So we're always going to be kind of conflicted with that. Mm-hmm. Back to Fiji though, so we kind of understand your headspace going into it, and what were the things that you learned through 8 months of isolation? What were your practices? Did you develop? I know I saw you posting on Instagram recently about ice baths, saunas. Did you do any meditation? Other than surfing, what were some of the practices and what was learned from those practices?
The main thing, so much of my travels to Fiji, well, of course, that Tavarua Island resort is my favorite in the world. And then the people, it's just Fijian people, I think, are what make that place so special. Yeah. I was going to Fiji a lot for those mega swells, or like, one of those couple swells a year that you go and it'd probably be your best ride of the year. And so when I found myself locked down at my favorite place in the world as the only surfer on the island, and at times empty lineups, what I did wrong was expectations in the beginning. And in the first thing that comes to mind, the fantasy is like, oh my God, I'm going to get one of those historical every 3 to 5 year swells. And I had it visualized. We're going to rock up. It'll be me. It'll be, the local Fijian dudes that charge, Shay, Yuri, and those guys. And it's going to be like surreal. I thought I looked at it as like, it's going to be some numbing experience, like outer body. Oh my God. So that's where I set my standard, because that's where I went. And the first 2 weeks, they have these things called bungi walus, and walu is 7, so it's 7 days of like howling trade winds. And there was almost 2 of them back to back. Like it was 11 days of being pinned on the island. And when it gets windy there, you're in the South Pacific. You're not going snorkeling. You're on the island. And a couple days of cards. Scott Weiner was on the island, so I had somebody to kind of hang out with. But we kept looking at the surf report like every day and looking at the storm patterns every day. And it being such an active area during that time, things come under the Tasman Sea and then up the chute between New Zealand and Australia like often on the far out 14-day models. And you can sit there and go, oh my God, here it comes. And then day 12 it disappears and you're like, oh my God, there it goes. And I played this game and it drove me insane. By like day 10 or 11, I did it to myself. It was just a mental place I was putting myself in. So the first thing I realized was, dude, you're going to have to settle into being patient and move into island time. A word they use in Fiji is vahewa, like slow down. And I don't vahewa. I frickin' speed up. It's what I do. And I began to see the writing on the wall of, hey, not every day is going to meet your expectations. and maybe not even every month. Yet you need to get out of your own way here, because you've been given a gift from people allowing me to be there. I also felt again from the universe, like it was just too good. So how do you undo this, and how do you simplify? A lot of my thing is I over hustle, even in a work aspect, not being in a 9 to 5, I guess a job where you know how much money you're making every week, what your life is like. Like I still live an alternative lifestyle based around surfing. Mm-hmm. But it's riddled with fear of the future, fear of tomorrow, right? Because your income fluctuates. As you can imagine, it's seasonal, there's good and bad days, whatever. So I had gone a little nutty there on the surf lessons. Every day was insane, but I had exhausted myself. So I was like, oh my God, I have a way to like let go right now of that need to always be doing too much. It's a successful personality, but it's a really burn the candle at both ends. And I run into really gnarly days of depression, anxiety within there, because it's just, I'm running too high. So let go of the expectations of the greatest whale of all time and be like, dude, you're in the greatest place of all time. Every day here can be an opportunity for me at 35 years old to better myself. And I said, what's most important right now? I could do anything in the world. I mean, I thought about it. Like, I could pick up a college class if I wanted to. I could jump online. And
Roseman is getting his MBA.
Is he?
Through COVID, yeah.
Well, dude, that freaked me out. I was like, do I need to get a college degree? And what would I get it in? What would I, like... Because there was another thing of like, dude, don't make some crazy decision right now. You're on an island. Like, actually, where is your head at? Because you can get a little bit funny.
It was your hustle instinct taking over.
Well, so I started to freak out. I was like, and then guilt comes over me, because it's like, oh my God, you've been given this opportunity. Are you doing enough with it? That's where I go with most of my life. And I was like, here we go, dude. You're getting into your cyclical pattern. Like, you just stop. And I stopped. And so then I went to health. I picked up like exercise and training to get through injuries, to get back into surfing, but I'd never really done it as like a day-to-day thing. And you realize, and people in their like 50s get mad at me when I say this, but as you get older and you've beat your body up, there's work to be done to just stay at a level to perform at. And we all have to check our ego as you get older. You just can't do huge airs into the flats because you blow your knees and ankles out, and it's not like it's real at that point, you know? Like, yeah. I'm getting at that point where I look at surfing a little differently. So I made a vow to myself that the first thing I did was check my alcohol intake. You know, I was on an island, and anybody could see it as like the greatest vacation of all time. And why wouldn't you sit there and kind of just have drinks at sunset and whatnot? And I'm like, I should just not do that. So I cut back on the alcohol, and then on the days that there was nothing going on, being sedentary is tough for me, so I need movement. There's a gym on the island, and for the first time of going to that island for 14 years, I went into the gym, and I had no clue where I was beginning. And I just started making stuff up. I've done gym work, but I wasn't going to start lifting weights and stuff. I wasn't going to start doing that. It's just there's a treadmill, a bike, push-ups, whatever. I started going on YouTube, like, what are good daily exercises? So I got into the 100 push-ups a day, 100 sit-ups. I would run like 2 miles and jump on the bike for an hour. Like, that's how I started. And it became this daily thing, where even when I was surfing, I would get into the gym because it began to start feeling better. I had, for my first low back pain, which I think was from the surf lessons, whipping those softboards around and like pushing people out and turning them and like all of that, this weird back pain came over me where here's another piece. I got to borrow a jet ski from a friend, so I had a jet ski over there. When I went to jump off the ski to go surf, like I would jump onto my board and literally like try to gingerly get on it because this low back pain hurt so bad. One day I was in the gym and I was doing these kind of sit-up variations, and I began to hear this really gnarly bone-on-bone crack in my left hip, and I started tripping because my 2 ways off of the island if it could even happen, was there was no medic around. There was no doctor on the island. So getting hurt or getting sick were like the two things for me to avoid. That came into play a little bit, although I had a couple where I went a little psycho on some sessions, but that's an area that you can get hurt really easy, especially if you're surfing Cloudbreak like every day. Even when it's head high, you can find yourself in a precarious position down inside on that dry reef. It's just one of those waves. So when I was doing this in the gym, I'm like, oh my God, this is gnarly. But it didn't hurt, and I've done enough physical therapy. I kept going through it, and all of a sudden there's a huge clunk in my hip. It's all like loud. And I stopped everything I was doing. I was like, what the hell was that? And I got up, and my back, I was like, because I was, you know, when you're injured, you check your injury all the time. I checked my back. I was like, whoa, pain's a lot less. And then I had this immediate thought, like, God, I wish I could ice this thing down. And I remembered seeing a Yeti cooler, and the island has an industrial ice machine maker. I'd always saw these ice baths, but I hate to say it, I thought it was a fad on Instagram. It looks cool. Like, you see people doing it, I'm like, yeah, you look cool. But it made no sense to me. Like, why? It made no sense. I was on a hot island, done enough chiropractic work that if I could ice this adjustment that I got in the gym, maybe I was on track to like naturally curing this back thing. I filled the ice bath up, and I did it really low because I wanted it to be cold, and we had a temperature gauge for COVID checks every day. But I want it to be 32 degrees. Like, my mind instantly goes like, I want this to be like gnarly. I want the real experience. And I could only get it to like 42 or something. And the first time I did it, I hit up Greg Long because he does those. And I was like, dude, how long do you sit in these? And he's like, well, it depends how long you're in them. And I'm like, well, if mine's at 42, and I was looking at Wim Hof stuff, it seemed like people did it for 5 minutes. I'm like, I should do it for 15. Seriously, this is where my mind goes. So I was in this Yeti cooler that, because I'm, you know, a lot smaller than your average person, like I could like get down into it, and I had the water real low to try to get it cold with the ice. And I put on I don't know why I got into Tool during this time, because it's weird. It is strange, but it's like this really motivating music for me. Like, when I got in the gym, I didn't want to be in there. I wanted to be in a headspace, so I just put on some Tool. And it just got me in that like place where you want to just kind of mess some shit up. So I put on this concert, and it was so gnarly, dude. In the first 5 minutes in this ice, I had a panic attack, and it's that fight or flight thing, and it's a thing that all you have to do is stand up. Like, all you have to do is stand up. But I am somebody that's always enjoyed the mind. I think a lot of the big wave stuff is the same thing. All you have to do is take off. All you have to do is jump out of the boat. All you have to do is buy the plane ticket. Like, it's actually simple, but to actually go, it's hard. It's the whole thing. So I found myself in this cool mental moment. And then I just know I have anxiety and depression. And when this panic attack kicked in, my mind went to I have panic attacks often. A lot of it for me is the fear of the future, just panicking, like, is everything going to be okay with this lifestyle? Because I'm kind of just throwing stuff on the wall. And I settled into it, and I was breathing, and I got through it. And then all of a sudden it wasn't as gnarly and cold. And then around the 8-minute mark, another one popped up. Full panic. Like, dude, get out. My body was tripping because I was shaking at this point too. And I'm like, oh my God, this is rad. This is like a very quick, concentrated version of like things that I go through. I made it to 15 minutes, and that night I went in, the hot water doesn't last very long. So I took a hot shower, and then I put jeans on. I had like this down jacket for the airplane that I had, and wrapped myself in all of the blankets in the room, and for 2 hours was sitting there like shaking, freezing. But it was kind of rad, and I was too cold to go to dinner that night. Like, I just sat freezing. And I have an Oura ring. I got one of these Oura rings. And another thing that I have is insomnia. And I'd never really tracked my sleep. I'd done one sleep study, and they said it came back perfectly normal. And I was like, that's crazy. So my sleep study is bad. My scores are between 65 and 70. That's out of 100. And really, I have really restless sleep. Like, I wake up 12 to 20 times a night, and I think that's my problem. Dude, this night of sleep, was incredible. My score was like 94. I think I woke up once and usually I have about 5.5 hours of sleep. I had 8 hours of sleep. And I was like, holy crap, this is rad. Because to be honest with you guys, I've been prescribed pharmaceuticals for my sleep issue. The worst one was when I didn't sleep for 2 days. And it was during a Chopu swell was coming up, and Keala Kennelly, do you remember that wave that she rode? She got an XXL award for it. Well, it was that swell. And
it was just an image, though. They didn't have the video. Right?
No, but it's gnarly.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I think they were calling it Code Blue instead of Code Red.
Mm-hmm.
And she had called me, and she's like, dude, I want you to come with me. And I didn't tell her, but I was like, I can't make it. And it was literally on day 3 after I hadn't slept for 2 days. And I have nights, it's better now, but I literally have nights where I just start thinking. And I don't know if people out there who don't sleep, you can get to 2 a.m. and think you're going to solve the world for some reason. And so this sleep thing is real for me, and the pharmaceuticals were messed up. I think it was an antidepressant they put me on for a month, and I got to a point where I felt, it was weird. I felt like creepy is a way, like I didn't feel like I was even in my own skin. Foggy. My cognitive thinking process wasn't very good, and it was just, I was sleeping better, but like my day-to-day life was like almost zombie-like.
Weird.
And my anxiety and panic and all that stuff was even, but it just didn't feel right. Like it was almost like I was in the world, but like from afar. And I didn't want to go through life like that, so I stopped. And I didn't realize on those, I was on a low dose, but you're not supposed to cold turkey them. And on day 2, I had this radical paranoia afternoon. It was really gnarly. I was driving on the freeway, and I almost pulled over because I just had a fear that something horrible was about to happen to me. I even called my mom. She's like, dude, okay? She's like, but this is it. It's because you're getting off of those things. She's like, you need to call your doctor. I called the doctor, and he's like, yeah, we usually have people like wean off of those. I probably would have taken about 2 months for you. He's like, you're good though. You've only been doing this for a month. I'm like, well, what do your patients usually do it for? He's like, I have patients who've been doing this for 20 years.
Yep.
And in that moment, I looked at him and I was like, hey man, I got to be honest with you. Like, I wish you told me what I was doing, because I didn't completely know. Like, I was at the point, and I think you as a doctor, I get it. Like, I had to sleep, but like, this was gnarly. I was going to fall into a habitual daily routine of taking this pill. And I think a lot of it is just placebo of relying on taking a pill. I was like, dude, I don't want that in my life. I'd rather figure out this thing. So long story short, that ice bath thing blew my mind. And I think a lot of people use it for inflammation. I used it for the mental aspect. So I started doing one of those every day. So when you say, like, what was your routine? I vowed to myself to use every surf day to the fullest. I was like, on behalf of all surfers in the world, I owe it to, and I hate to say this, but I owe it to you, as much as I owe it to me, to like make the most of this. And I was surfing my brains out, whether it was windy, perfect, small, whatever, like having an epic time. But then my day-to-day routine to not get into a dark place on a small area where there's no escape, to like, I think just removing yourself from a scene, you couldn't do that, you're on an island, was the exercise, the ice bath. I really stopped drinking and got into my diet. I was able to go in the kitchen at times, cook my own meals. The meals were great, but I was just doing in between meals of smoothies, stopped the white rice, kind of like carby stuff. And I can show you, I didn't mean to, but I kind of took pictures of it along the way. I went to a place, it took about 3 months, but on the 3rd month, like, I looked at myself in the mirror, I'm like, dude, I've never, ever, ever looked like this. And the thing that got me the most was my facial structure. I didn't realize it, but, and this is, I went and did a blood panel when I first got home. I put it out on Instagram trying to find a nutritionist. I've never done nutrition or diet, whatever. And my buddy Tim Brown, actually, who's the greatest human of all time, he knew the guy, and he's like, just call this guy. So I have a blood panel, and it tripped me out to watch, although I know that I was surfing a lot and I was exercising and dieting, but like, it felt like my body became less inflamed. And I finally had given myself a break, but I don't know what from. Main thing I think is beer. That's just like the first thing I go to. But yeah, my face shrunk, and I saw my cheekbones and my bones next to my eyes, and I was like, where the hell have I been? Not that I've been doing something weird, but I just feel like I was not putting the right stuff in my body, and maybe daily could be paying more attention to how I treat myself. Mentally with the ice bath stuff, and then physically with an actual exercise routine outside of surfing. Surfing, you'll get in great shape no matter what, but I think for us avid surfers, it's almost like you have to do something outside of surfing. And the imbalances it creates and injuries. This light bulb clicked in me that even though I'm 35, it doesn't mean that I have to become a 35-year-old. I think it's easy to fall into excuses. I'm getting old, my metabolism, the stress of life, I don't have time. You can say it all, right? But I'm like, dude, at some point I felt like I was 16 again. And it was really weird. One day I woke up and I just was I think I hate there's mirrors in a gym, so you're like looking at yourself. But I was on the bike and I looked at myself and I didn't say it out loud, but inwardly I'm like, dude, I'm really proud of myself right now. Like, this is really cool. I've am facing everything and things that I never even thought to do. And so there's a lot of story in here, and I apologize. I haven't talked to anyone about this, so you're getting like a diarrhea of the mouth right now.
Yeah, I'm just going to prompt a few more things. Number one, did the ice bath fix the back issue? Number two, how did all of those improvements affect your surfing? And then number three, did those improvements affect the anxiety and depression?
Yeah, so the next day I just went in my routine and I was doing some sit-ups again, and then my right hip began to do the same thing that my left did the day before. And I just went with it, and the same thing, it clunked. And I had a high ankle sprain like 10 years ago, and I think once you do something to your ankle, the scary thing is it throws off your hips. My guess was, especially when I surf a lot, my ankle and everything, like I was doing something. And so those 2 days in a row, I had 2 hip adjustments. I'd been to a physical therapist, I'd been to a surgeon, like I was tripping out on this, and nobody knew what it was. And without anti-inflammatories, which, Advil's rad, and that was the perfect diagnosis for, hey, you're inflamed somewhere, just hammer Advil for 2 months and this will go away. It didn't work. It's gone. My pain was gone. In 48 hours, it was gone. And I'm still smiling now because it was an injury that was affecting me every day, even when I slept. And it was just that reminder of like, oh, it's so easy to go to the Band-Aids of life.
Yeah.
It's so easy to go to the quick fixes. It's so hard to go to the gym. I don't want to walk in a gym. It's hard to sacrifice your vice, some alcohol. It's hard to not eat that and make something like for yourself. Don't go to your favorite little restaurant, like diet. Okay, and I just started checking the boxes and I'm like, it's not that hard. It's hard in the beginning because you almost shock your system and you shock your routine. And that's where the part where I looked at myself in the mirror, I'm like, dude, good job, man. Like the guilt of maybe not doing enough, I finally realized like I was bettering what was the most important thing, which is me. And I'm a people pleaser. And so a lot of my self accolades, a lot of times is like making other people happy. Or at times, I think living up to people's expectations. And like I was actually just creating my own, and they were simple and small and tangible. And every day was great. So now I get into the anxiety and depression. I got in, I think, to the best state that I've been maybe since high school. In high school, I had a schedule. I knew who I was. I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to get out of there, be a professional surfer, move into a lifestyle that, creating my dream, and I did. It was rad, but it's hard to create your own schedule. That's probably whatever. You can get deeper into that, but during that time, I found peace and stillness, and it was crazy. One day I was walking down the path, and I didn't realize it, but I walk with my head down. I have no clue why. And I look at the ground. And I was on this island, and it was really cool because I was there long enough to see seasonal changes. And when I first got there, everything was bare. And then we went into the season where things were beginning to bloom. And I literally stopped and I looked up and I'm like, what are you doing? You're missing out on the world right in front of your face. So I made a funny thing. Every day I had to see 3 new things on the island. And that was my way of getting myself, of living in this weird tunnel vision of looking at my feet, to keeping my head up and just being aware of like literally that moment of day to day, just the way I was walking. And it was as funny as like a new flower bloom or a new plumeria plant or a palm tree like frond that I hadn't seen that was beautiful. Because the place is gorgeous. Everywhere you look is gorgeous. But I was literally like, I had a mask on some days. And those were the days where that's where I have to be real conscious of my triggers and what I'm doing. Those were the days where I was overthinking. And I was probably in some radical anxious moment or some weird depressed moment. I was just looking down. And the gratitude in these things, like, this is what I think is going to shape the rest of my life. Although it's hard at times to look at your problems, like my personal problems. It's so cool to recognize them and go, I can fix this. And something like that, like, this is going to make me happier. And yeah, I just started to simplify. And I think that was a way of controlling my anxiety, depression, panic attack thing. The ice baths, they changed my sleep. So I did one every day. Although there were some days I had like 6,500 calorie burn days. Like I was surfing like for 9 hours. At the end of those days, the last thing I wanted to do was an ice bath. Like I just wanted to die and do it all again the next day. So I didn't do it. But yes, on that, the injury and...
How do those improvements in your lifestyle, the alcohol and the diet, affect your surfing?
It's just the day-to-day. Like, I'm somebody who doesn't surf for an hour. I surf for 3 to 4 hours. And the next morning, that morning where you wake up again at 4:30, you want to be in the water by 6, I was ready. And that's where I noticed it,
Okay.
In the longevity. Because I was on a path, and I wanted to make the most of it. And I realized that by hydrating more, by drinking, not having a beer a night or two, like I was replacing that with waters, and just that simplicity, I noticed it the next days. And where I was usually a little foggy at the beginning of sessions, like it'd take me an hour to warm up into it, like I was just on, like ready to go. And it made me feel better because in that area things change quickly and you might have an hour window. So it was interesting, but my life centered around surfing. Like that was the coolest part, of course. Mm-hmm. I could go surf whenever I wanted at one of the best, there's all those waves get good at a lot of the best waves in the world, but I just wanted to make the most out of it and be on them when they turned on. Yeah. And so all this little dojo work, I was like, had a mental dojo going on. Right. The reward was the surf.
One thing I didn't hear you say about the ice baths, I paid attention to them years ago, and I tried doing it a few times. I saw the benefits you were talking about, and then I just stopped doing it because, whatever, sidetracked. One thing I didn't hear you talk about was the mood elevation.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's one thing. And it's like funny, everything you said about going to the gym is hard. Putting yourself on a diet is hard. Totally true. Not as hard as doing the ice bath. So if you start your day confronting literally the hardest thing that you could do just as a human being is confronting that fear in the ice bath. If you accomplish that first thing in the day, the diet looks easy.
Yeah.
The gym looks easy.
Yeah.
Everything, every little task that you encounter at work becomes easy. So mood elevation, did you experience any of that?
Yeah, it was amazing. So I stopped doing 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And started doing 5 to 10. I tried to at least do 5. What I noticed is I think I was shocking my nervous system, and I did 1 in the morning on a day of no surf, but where I really enjoyed the benefits was my sleep. So I liked doing it around 6 because that sort of shock went into me. A lot of my problem sleeping could be falling asleep, and it like calmed me, but for an hour after the ice bath, you are euphoric.
Yeah, exactly.
And there is this radical, you're happy. Like if you were to interview me an hour after an ice bath and then interview me on whatever, some normal part of the day, I would be really interested to just see my outlook. And I think it's really cool, and it's a reminder that if you're someone like me who I think wants to continue to push themselves, but by pushing yourself, you're going to have to search along the way to not push yourself too far outside of actually your mental and physical capability. Like that's what I do. There's these things like this getting cold that like resets me. And I literally have this thing that like, hey dude, everything's okay. And that statement for me is really important. And that ice and that bit of happiness that it gives you, and it wears off after like 2 hours. But carrying all the baggage and all that stuff, it's just like gone. And to give yourself a break from yourself is freaking awesome. Totally. And to do it naturally. You know, I've been the person, and I will always, if I can inspire anybody to not. There is purpose for these pills. There is. But we are abusers as humans, what we do. And just, if you're willing to sacrifice getting a little uncomfortable and letting a natural way do it for you, we're in this for the long haul. And that's the thing to keep reminding ourselves. There's no quick fix in life. And I think the first step is really just facing yourself. I've been somebody to run from it. One of the greatest gifts of this moment in time for me was being forced in a place that I had to face myself. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm going to work on that the rest of my life. But the cool thing is I'm being okay with myself. And I don't know if that makes sense or not, but yeah.
So one final detail on the ice bath that I thought of while you were talking is you're talking about the amount of time that you do it. What I've had explained to me is that the time actually doesn't matter. What you're really looking to get past is that panic. So once you kind of get past the panic and you're fully relaxed and settled in, the fight or flight is gone. Yeah. You're just okay being where you're at, then you're okay to get out. Yeah. And some people can achieve that in 3 minutes. Your first time it takes 15. You know?
Well.
And I don't know if that's true or not. That's just the way I explained it to me, and I found that to be actually pretty accurate. So the question now is, having experience, and I will get back, I want to hear about surfing too, but now that you've experienced all that, or do you stay in California? Can you maintain the mindset that you were living with here? And if you do, what do you do for work? What does your lifestyle look like? Can you drive on the 405 and still have that mindset?
Yeah. It's interesting. I journaled maybe 4 of the 8 months, and my last journal entry was like, a part of wanting to leave was wanting to challenge myself to do it in normal scenarios. I think anybody could relate to being in paradise is extra motivating. It is a beautiful place visually. I think your scene where you are can just be therapeutic. Totally. I was able to have choices to go bigger and better myself daily. Like they were available. That's amazing. I've been back home, and it's so interesting. So I'm calling it, for 2 weeks I was Gandhi. Like nothing could touch me. It was so amazing. Being in LA, I've lived my whole life, although with lots of traveling I've been removed from it, but I am a Los Angeles person. And the first thing that you encounter is how loud it is here. Like I was on an island. I was hearing birds all day. And then I went down to check the surf one day, and it was just people are yelling. And my friend was there, and people are awesome. They're like, dude, where you been? And we were talking, and I looked at him, I was like, why is that guy yelling? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, he's just yelling. He's like, well, they're running like a marathon or something. I'm like, what? Does he need to yell? And I started laughing. I'm like, oh, dude, that's me. I'm a yeller too, though. Like the waves are firing. I'm the guy screaming because the waves are firing. And then I'd get on the road and somebody would fly past me. Like I got on the 405. It was cool because I brought 11 boards and I broke 9 out of the 11. And Channel Islands was so rad, and they're like, dude, we're going to get a quiver going for you when you get home. So I got home and I went up there to get some boards, and I was on the 405. This is day 2. And it started raining. I'm like, okay, we're in the bowels now. Like, you want to see some crazy stuff? Jump on the 405 in the rain around 12 p.m.
Totally.
People get wacky. And people were being wacky. And I like to get over in the far lane, the fast lane, because now you only have the people on your right doing crazy stuff. And it was that thing where you'd watch somebody cut you off, cut someone else off. And I'm like, dude, I'm just going to pass you in like 20 seconds. But usually I'd sit there, and my form of road rage is in this tone, and I'll just sit and talk to the person as if they were sitting next to me. Not very nicely, but I don't think I've ever been like a. And I started laughing. And I was sitting in the car, I'm like, holy crap, I've never looked at this place humorously. I've always been really like tense and like in it. You know, like where you get tunnel vision?
Totally.
And I found myself laughing. I was like, holy crap, dude, well, laughter is the greatest thing in life. And I realized, wow, I've carried on this really low level of stress from the island life. And it was actually just like awesome. Like where I thought that people were like, how are you doing? And I was texting them like, dude, I'm great. This is epic. These people are crazy. And I was telling people like, this is the most entertaining place in the world. Because I had removed myself from being a part of it and was just watching the chaos. And it's fine. It's a great way to look at it. Then I went surfing. I did a coaching lesson. I went down to El Porto. And if Surfline says 3 to 4 ever, that place gets wild now. Like, right. And I have these 2 10-year-olds with me. And I don't catch waves when I surf. I try to just get the kids waves because I just don't see the point of that's their time and I'm there to facilitate them riding waves. It was insane. Like I was next to people like shoulder to shoulder, but then even outside of us, longboarders outside, shoulder to shoulder, people inside. It was pretty like good and closing out. So there was stuff going on. A guy ditched his board like in front of me, almost hit me, kind of hit the kid that I was working with. And I sat there and it like all of a sudden my Gandhi began to shake. And I'm like, oh God. And anxiety started creeping in. And like normal me was coming back. And I'm like, dang. Looked at the kids and the kid, I do every hour. I had 3 lessons every hour. And I had to get in for the second lesson and I couldn't get a wave because there were so many people. So somebody took off and I just cut them off. Like I had to go to the beach. Went to the beach, got these kids paddle back out right where we were. And this guy was like, now that's the definition of a burn. And I looked at him and I just started laughing. I'm like, hey, dude, everyone has created this. Like the only way for me to catch a wave was to go in front of someone. I'm like, this can all be so different, but it's not. And it's just, and the guy just was like looking at me. I don't know, and I'm like, there's no point to just explain any of this. But I had a moment. I went from surfing empty Cloudbreak to hundreds of people at Closeout El Porto. And then, so that got me going. I was like, oh, crap. Okay, here's reality beginning. And then 2 days later, I took a kid and I was taking him back home. So I was like more in like trying to get his stuff in my car. I got him home and then I went to go do my own surf. And I went down and I got in the back of my car and I was looking all around. My surfboard wasn't there. And I was tripping. You have that moment in life where you're just like, and I stood there and it came over me. I'm like, I left my board where I parked this morning. I didn't put my board in my car. So I was like 5 minutes away from where I had parked, and this is an hour later. And I drove back and I looked and it's gone. And, I just sat there so bummed. And I had it so wrong. I'm like, somebody stole my board. And my dad's a judge. I came home and talked to him. He's like, that's not stealing. That's legal. You abandoned your thing. I'm like, you're kidding me. I was like, we live in a world that if I leave my something, that I forfeit, that I own it, and somebody can take it and they can take ownership of it? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh God, why did I leave Fiji? Like, what? So, yeah, I've had like as you could imagine, like Los Angeles hit, but then I have these carried on gifts from the island. I am struggling to continue the routine. I find myself less motivated than I'd hoped I would be here. This is all on me, you know, and it's one of those things that it's up to me to get it, keep it going. And
so have you maintained the same diet, exercise protocol, ice bath protocol?
Diet, sleep, yes. I haven't done my outside of surfing exercise. I've surfed 5 times in 3 weeks. It just so happens we're having the worst winter of all time here. I thought that I had killed it. The country opened up December 1st. I left on the 10th. I'm like, oh my God, I just missed, you know, summer wasn't very good here. I was watching it from afar. I'm like, I'm going to get home and score winter. And I got home. I was like, oh no, there's no winter.
Yeah.
Dang it. So no. And then here at my house, like I actually went and looked. I want to get a chest freezer. Like you can put these things that make them cold, right? Because going and buying 60 pounds of ice every day is just a nightmare. And I realized, like, and I knew when I was there, I just had so much of this epicness at my fingertips being there. I've gone to buy the ice bath twice, but I haven't. Part of it is because I live at my parents' and I don't want to start putting things in their yard. I looked at buying a sauna. Like, there's 6 saunas. I think there's one called Almost Heaven or something. And they're the barrel saunas, but they're $5,000. So it's like, I have this thing and I'm just blowing it because part of it is I don't want to spend the money. And then number 2, it's like not being at a place that's mine and trying to be respectful. But I could probably do both. And it's a funny thing, now that I'm back in LA, you get in that lifestyle where it is about, so much of it around here is the amount of money you make, you know, and then having this alternative lifestyle, I always wonder, how much am I supposed to be making?
Yeah.
And so I'm confused, and I've been at this place before, and it's like, okay, apparently my immediate scenario is not motivational for me. So you bring up, do you live in California? I am now thinking about a second property outside of the U.S. And the first thing I think of is Hualtuco. I love going there. I've been going there for a long time to surf. The next place, which is really strange, but I think of like Costa Rica for some reason, although I don't have any ties to there. It just became where I wrote, it's so interesting to hear you say that post, where I wrote, I don't even know what, not losing me is something like that, right? I didn't have to lose me. That was the part of when I started the surf lessons. I removed myself from my favorite thing in the world to have it become my business, which was surfing. And I don't ever want to walk up to the beach with dread, ever, you know? And I thought that at this point in my life, okay, continue to accept that you're not a professional surfer anymore. Let go of that. That's still a process, and not as much as it used to be, but it is. And then I was like, okay, I got to, maybe create a surf camp and like bear down into removing myself from even surfing as much as I do. If I could do it, I would want to surf every day. Like, it is what I love. And I was in a mental space that I had to give up a portion of what I loved and made me happiest in life. And when I went back, or when I had this moment in Fiji, I'm like, what are the things? Why were you so stoked? We talked about, of course, anything, what would make everyone happy, but I was like, oh my God, I just got back to, I love being in the ocean every day. Love surfing every day. It's funny and whatever, but like, I'm not going to give that up. And I don't have to. And so however this life goes, like, a big part is I want to create and stay in good shape, right-minded to continue, like, surfing to a certain ability. And it's so weird, but like, I still watch surf movies, like sometimes daily, slow-moing. I'm like, holy crap, I'm still into getting better at this after all this time at this age. And I almost had a resurgence, not almost, I did, when I was in Fiji, of like, I got to sit and play with my technique, and because no one was around, the things that I hate about my surfing, I was working through. And I can be somebody that gets worried about people watching and whatever. And it was just rad, dude. I was in all of these aspects, willing to let go of my ego, work on my mistakes as a human, work on my mistakes as a surfer, but then within it all, just be in the moment and using life as it was as much as I could. So that's now the challenge, to have that a part of life moving forward.
Yeah. It sounds like you're happy to be based in LA, but the part that you don't want to give up is being able to travel all the time. So whatever it is that you do for professionally, like the surf camp anchors you here, unfortunately, for better or worse.
Yeah.
You know. So whatever the new business model is, it has to allow you to be on the road, and
or is it just somewhere else?
Maybe could be that too.
Like that's
somewhere where there's good waves.
Well, I'm just thinking like, maybe it's 6 months out of the year.
Right. Totally. The bigger question is, the theme throughout this whole conversation has been, what do you do after a pro surf career? And so I would like for you to share advice for young professional surfers or up and coming professional surfers. Your career lasted, a decade and a half, let's say?
22 years.
Okay, 22 years. I'm going to presume that you were relatively well paid for 2 decades through pro surfing. What financial advice do you give young surfers who are making good money right now?
Save your money.
As opposed to invest, or as opposed to spend?
Well, yeah. So the next part was, or it is, I got lucky. My parents, when I was 16, introduced me to their CPA for tax purposes, because it was pretty cool. I was making enough money that taxes were a thing. And then the CPA introduced me to a financial advisor. And now, at this point, 20 years later, having such things called IRAs, nobody knows what an IRA is at 16. Maybe not nobody, but I didn't. Most young surfers are paid, but without any direction of using it wisely. Because be a teenager with an incredible skill, with a blank paycheck to travel the world, it's hard to have your spending money, but then have your savings and investment money, as you said. So my advice is, you could ask around, ask your parents. Like, that path for me was incredible. Having a tax advisor and having a money advisor is incredible. If you start saving now, and the way that you save within there, your money makes money for you. And although I'm set up to be 60, I still got to make it to there. It's a pretty comfortable feeling knowing that, like, I have money that's safe. I have money in stocks as well. I have a diverse portfolio, as you say. But I've always been in it for the long haul. Like, I'm conservative and really have never made crazy. The craziest thing that I did was buy a home at 22. But I still looked at that as an investment. Though I wanted to move out and have a home where me and my friends basically didn't respect it whatsoever for about 5 years, because I was 22 to 27. Let's come over, man. Let's go nuts here. That is a part of my portfolio that I look at now 11 years later, and in 6 years, if I stay the track, which is why I rented it out, I'll own that home outright. Something that I did during the peak of my surf career was I doubled my principal payments for 2 years. My financial advisor wanted to kill me because they want the money for stocks, not for real estate. But that brought my mortgage, my 30-year loan down so much that I'll be able to own this home by the time I'm 41, which is amazing. So there's these things that you can set yourself up for where I didn't completely understand exactly what I was doing. They were unknowingly, but with a bit of purpose, the right thing to do. But it was hard because you sacrifice a bit of the playboy lifestyle.
Of course.
Although if you're making enough money, you can always spend a chunk of it. I think if you're not spending the money to be happy, what's the point? Although there's people out there that need less entertainment and are just full savers, and that's rad too. But I feel for the guys that were better than me or same level, whatever, that either got sucked up in the party with, a drug and alcohol, an accidental relationship with the pregnancy, that will stop you at a young age. And then the guys that kept chasing the contracts, that by the fourth sponsor, these people don't even want to sponsor you anymore because they can't brand you. They know that within a year or two, they're probably going to lose you to the next highest bidder. So I think loyalty is actually a very important thing too. Although the surf industry has changed a lot. And what you guys have now, which I was able to end my career with, is the ability to produce yourself and brand yourself. And the hardest thing about it is you have to look at yourself as a job, and you should be doing something every day. And that doesn't mean go surf. I mean, yes, you need to surf every day, but that's not your job anymore. Like these kids, like YouTube channels, social media, branding outside of the close industry sponsors. I think the female girls do it the best right now, really. There's girls without a major sponsor that are just crushing. You know, through their lifestyle and what they love to do in life, they're aligning themselves with those brands, doing these one-off advertisements 30 times a year for good money without a sticker on their board. And I applaud them because that's all on them. Although most of them may have a manager helping direct them, it's still like amazing. You took control of your destiny and didn't leave it up to a team manager to tell you what surf trip to go on, to book your flight, to do this. You know, it's like, dude, put in the extra effort, hustle, make every day an opportunity. And I think with social media, although I'm kind of like pushing away from it, there's a way, you know, but you have to be right-minded and have a personality to like get after it.
Yeah. Couple of thoughts on social media. I was actually talking to Devin Howard this morning.
I love him.
Yeah.
Love you, Devin.
And he was saying it's interesting how surf is different than skate and snow, where if you look at any of the pro surf skaters or pro snowboarders, they're not really publishing clips of themselves skating and snowboarding. Surfers are doing it every single day.
What are they doing?
Photos of them and their family, you know? They probably still have a media infrastructure that is publishing them skating, and so they don't need to promote it on their own.
Yeah.
But there's an element of or a lack of self-promotion in that realm that surfers are kind of shameless about, interestingly. So it's just an interesting note. I don't know what it means or who's going to end up with more promotion in the long run.
It's funny, you just brought something up for me. I did 3 posts in 8 months. One was on my birthday. One was for 4th of July because I have this video I love posting, getting barreled with a firework. And then that post that you read, which was kind of my coming out, which was very ambiguous still. I thought I was going to lose like a ton of followers. Right. That's the biggest fear, right, of not being a part of the system, that if you're not ingrained and just on it all the time, your thing goes down. Dude, I lost 100 followers. It was kind of funny because I got off it a bit, and I would look and I'd go, holy crap, I still have 88,800 followers and I don't do anything. Yeah. And I almost wondered if like Instagram put like a little bit of like a mask on me or something, because it made no sense. Right. But another fear that I have, and it's what you brought up and good for the skaters and snowboarders, is that I think fans want to relate to you. And of course you have it for your ungodly ability, right? It's like, wow, that's incredible that you do that stuff. But I think it's really important to show everybody you're human, and that although you have either a God-given talent or you have done it most everything in your life to produce this talent, you're still a human to the core. And when I begin to stop doing the look at me surf posts and begin to vulnerably share my emotional aspects, I would call them, dude, it's scary. It's scary because you're putting yourself out there to any response. And it's that lesson though of it's not about you at that point. It's like, how can you maybe inspire people, like actually? And what is it within your mentality that made you superhuman? Because everybody's the same. It's just certain people tap into something, be it a passion, be it hard work, be it I mean, addiction, like whatever, but hearing people honestly say what takes them to that level. I mean, you watch this thing with Michael Jordan, his is a lot of anger. And you're like, what? You know, you listen to these guys talk about Jordan, they didn't like playing with him. And he's like, yeah, dude, I was mad. I'm like, wow. But everyone still loves you. You don't, not yes and no, but it's like, he still was honest.
Yeah.
And I would rather honestly know people for better or worse than have somebody put a facade on. So that's who it's just interesting. I've like shed a lot of my friendship. Like, you know, I was a person that wanted everybody to like me. And in doing so, my friends were vast. But then I realized, like, who are my friends? And like, I also realized being alone for a long time, I think who you surround yourself with is very important, because when you're doing these soul searching moments, or when you're going through unexpected moments of loss, grief in life, you know, grief is now a common platform. My grief was the loss of my brother, but grief is everybody right now. Everybody's lost something from COVID, and there's actually compassion, like
Totally.
an even level, I think maybe for the first time globally with humans, that we can be compassionate for each other unspokenly, because everybody gets it. Mm-hmm. Like, dude, how cool is that? To take that pressure off of yourself to not be okay. Rad. Like, life is life. And I just know that I take things far successfully, and then at times it hits the wrong way. And I'm happy at this point to share with people, because the good times are fantastic, but you know, feeling alone during those bad times and the stuff that we've talked about, like, it's not fun. And it can be really difficult if the results don't produce themselves immediately. Like, I realize for me, I'm really ingrained emotionally. I'm a sensitive person, and I will be working on these aspects forever. And in that way, I have to be compassionate to myself. And that's something that I started doing recently that I wasn't, was just like having that, the thing that I want to help people with, turning it on myself and like being like, dude, you got to tell yourself that too, you know?
Totally.
And that's a bit of a new program for me. Mm-hmm. And it's helping me become more comfortable in my own skin. I guess I'm an extrovert, but like, I just am a personality that is outward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody I think who's figured out the social media, the right way to do it without feeling all the anxiety of posting every day, is John. It feels to me that he's fully actualized, and he sometimes doesn't post for months, but it seems evident that he's doing very cool things that he loves to do. Yeah. Sailing, photography. When he's injured, he's focused on recovery completely, not even worried about surfing. Then when he's into surfing, we see some of him surfing, but he's not chasing the algorithm. He's not trying to keep up with what Idolo's doing. He's totally doing his own thing. And so I feel like he's leveraged it for his own benefit without getting caught up in some of the anxieties that everybody else feels.
So I think the word there is authenticity.
Yeah. Authenticity is Gabriel's authentic in what he's posting every single day.
Yeah.
But John's also authentic because he's not that guy. He's a different guy.
It's something that I got caught up, because I really like speaking to kids now. I just experienced a lot as a kid. I kind of reflect, and a lot of the kids that I coach, the moms will call me, and I'll end up the next time I surf with them, we surf, but I just get straight into it, you know, like what's really going on. And these kids will say something to me, and I'm like, hey, dude, I don't know if the response is always but I can relate to you, and I'm going to tell you how I felt during this time, and you tell me if that's where you're at. And I'll say things. I've never said this to someone before, but I'm like, you deserve to hear this. I'm happy to be honest with you. And I say it, and the kid looks at me, and he goes, that's it. And I'm like, did you have trouble going to a therapist? He's like, yeah, I got in the room, the door closed, the guy, this and that. I'm like, dude, that was me too. I said, I would encourage you to go back and try again, because something that I think I did wrong was not talk about it. I just internalized, and it festered, and then I blew up. And that's where some of my unsuccessful moments in life came from, in relationships, in business aspects. I'm somebody who wears their heart on their sleeve and at times just cannot hold my tongue. And you smile and I smile, but like, you need to be a professional. And there's things I look back on and just go like, dude, why didn't you just walk away? Why didn't you just take a breath? Why didn't you just shut up? You know? And I speak to these kids and they tell me their problems and I'm like, man, we're all going through the same thing. It's different scenarios. Of course, it's your home. It's how well off you are with support and love from your parents and people surrounding you. Like, I always have to acknowledge the different social upbringings, right? But if we just stay in the middle of an average person, take the event of the place marker out and just place the emotion, and then watch the person try to speak about it, and you're like, dude, me too, man.
Yeah.
And that's the like day-to-day thing, where I think being authentic, although it's scary, because being authentic means that you're vulnerably like, we can go about this, and I'm a person that does know how to say the right thing, that could put out the right thing, that whatever. But it's like, there's no reward to that. You know, there's that risk and reward in life. And I think we should risk our emotions to know that it's okay and that lightning doesn't strike, but then it attracts the better people in your life.
Yeah.
You know, I think by doing that and it being uncomfortable for you, you're going to begin attracting that surrounding team. And it might be the woman or guy, you know, man for the rest of your life, but like, man, you got to put yourself out there. And for me, it's been hard because I think, unfortunately, it's pushed people out of my life. But I've just lately been attracting these people that challenge me, you know, that don't put up with my bullshit, that call me out when I'm not on the right path, but then also like engage to have a higher conversation, to have a deeper daily conversation. So it's not, you know, something that bothers me is the response. It's almost like an automated response. When you see somebody, you know what you're going to ask them. It's probably 2 or 3 questions. And then you're only willing to allow them to say so much without either showing them that you're not interested via your body language, or that saying that you watch. Like, I've watched people. It's really funny talking about Fiji. I rarely talk about the surfing. I go into, and I'm so happy that you actually wanted to talk about the personal things, because people want to hear about the surf. And I immediately go into what we've talked about. And I literally watched the guy roll his eyes. And I'm like, here he goes. And him go, and hey, dude, this has been great. I got to go. And I'm like, and he's off. Lost that one because it was too much. And it's actually, I know that person personally. And a lot of times I feel like it's people are either going through something, and I've touched on something that they are not acknowledging, or it's just something, it wasn't fast enough paced. It wasn't like, I can't go with this. Like, I'm just going to go. And I'm like, what the shit? Bye.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, totally. There's that saying, it's like, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably just in the wrong room. You know, like you're not actually the smartest person. You're just not in the wrong room. And so I think you confront that with friends, you know, and you want to surround yourself with the 5 people that you know best should all be smarter in some certain way, or more intellectually, or more emotionally savvy, or financially savvy, or whatever, so that you can be learning from those people. I don't know what I was going to say. I had another thought related to those things, but I do have to ask you about surfing as well in Fiji, despite you not wanting me to. All I'll ask you is, does footage, I'm sure you had amazing sessions. Does footage exist anywhere? Will we ever see it? What will you do with it? Because it's such a crazy time in the world. Like, I talked to John Roseman on the podcast a month ago, talking about reopening the island. And he's seen everything on Fiji in 30 years, and he didn't even have the experience that you had, you know? And so you're in such a unique position. Where's the footage? What do you do with it?
It's funny because I went over for the 14 days to be a surf coach and guide, so I didn't bring like a lot of personal stuff. Had I known I'd be there for 282 days, I would have packed a lot differently, clothes too. But I had a GoPro with a battery. So, I mean, the immediate response is like the best moments don't exist. And it was really hard because I'd get into these sessions and like 2 hours into it, be sitting there having this really tough conflict of like, oh, none of this is captured. Like, I am having the greatest moment ever. And there's a lot of times there's no one even there. Like, coming out of barrels and literally like screaming at like, yeah, it's like, maybe all you spirits up there are watching this. This is insane. So for me, it was a process of letting go, because most of my life has been documented, and most of it I purposefully had documented. Like, I made it happen. Bring a filmer. And then GoPros are classic, because I would bring a GoPro and I'd have to choose when to turn it on, because the battery would last about 45 minutes. And so sometimes I turn it on and like my 5 waves that I rode were crap. I'm like, oh, not now. And I put it back. I'm like, in an hour, and the tide drops. And my next 4 waves were insane. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is torture within its own right. Totally. And so, look, a big part of this process was like, I was on a soul surf mission. Yeah. And I think part of it goes into a classification of having this moment in time that was not meant to completely be documented. Yeah. And some, there's guys out there that scoff, photos and videos and all that stuff. I can't be that person because I was so involved in it. Yeah. But my life direction has pushed me away from there. And then this completely tipped the bucket dry. And there were moments, I am somebody that's a control freak, I've learned. And a lot of this stuff that happened during this trip was out of my control. And that was one of the things that I am not going to have this unbelievable story completely documented. So yes, there is footage, and I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I have a friend, Bryce Low-White, who I grew up with. He's an amazing editor and storyteller. I need to give it to somebody, because it's hours of randomness. I think it's great. It's just 282 days of like here, there, some over there, this, that.
That's what Free Scrubber was.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Yeah, and I think it's just funny. I had my cell phone too, so I thought about it. I actually have a lot of footage within stuff. We forget that our phones are videos, and I'd like to do it. I always loved the Surfer's Journal. Scott Weiner has a handful of images from some of the bigger days, and it would be fun. I just think that they'd be a great place to tell this story.
For sure.
Most of the people don't even know that this happened still, and there's a bit of me that still likes that.
Yeah.
So I don't have this immediate need to like go, and I think processing it after is important.
Agreed.
To helping tell what was actually so amazing about this. Visually, images like that tell an amazing story, but like, it's fun processing this with you and going through like, wow, what did I even really want to talk about then? It's probably not what most people were thinking. And yeah, I do want to, my parents are so cool. My dad's like, you gotta put this out. And I'm like, I know, I want you guys to see it, because there's things that for my parents, I want them to see what I got to experience, but it's just been an interesting trip for me that has been so abnormal to how I've done most surf trips in the last 20 years. And it became a soul search. And that's where I got most excited. When I really got into the meat and potatoes 4 or 5 months in, I was just on this like mission.
Yeah.
To like, who am I right now? Where am I at? And then where am I going to go with this? And a lot of it was preparing to leave, which was so strange.
Very weird.
Yeah.
The whole dynamic is interesting. there's no rush to get that footage out there.
No. I was gonna show you. I gotta show you. You gotta check out the body transformation. This is the funniest
Can I hit the
thing.
head real quick?
Yeah, hit the head.
I'm sure you have to too, probably.
I'll hit.
Where the end was. Oh no! Is that photoshopped?
Isn't that nuts?
That's got to be lighting. Did you do makeup on that?
Yeah, I just airbrushed.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
Dude, send me the regime. I'm gonna follow the diet and the exercise. That's unreal, dude.
It's fun for me because it's something that I wasn't expecting to do.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is, regarding all the footage and all that stuff, is there's no rush to get it out. Like, I agree with your dad. Oh yeah, people want to see it, but dude, read stories in the Surfer's Journal that are from 30 years ago.
Yeah. From
somebody. Even I'm sure Jerry Lopez, like all these guys, they didn't document the vast majority of their surf careers. And then they share a story 30 years later that's this iconic, it would be the greatest trip of anybody's life, you know? Yeah. And they're just like, oh yeah, you know? So no rush for you, I would say. Kind of one of the two final questions. Do you have any surf travel planned from here? What's next? Are you just locked down in LA for a period? Or?
Well, look, again, thanks everyone for putting up for my long rants. David, bless you.
They love it.
My surf travel plans next year, I want to do a lot of surf guiding trips. Like, I'm really excited. Things became really clear to me, like what I want to do moving forward. So I'm going to do my Punta Conejo 2 weeks again at the end of April, beginning of May. And then I've really been thinking about, I have this grief group surf therapy, and I thought about it a lot when I was on the island. And I did one a month for 18 months, and then COVID hit. And it's been cool because I just did it in LA, but there's people from all over the world a part of our group. And I thought about doing an actual like retreat in a Costa Rica or something. And I want to explore more of that. Honestly, there's a guilt around that. You know, it's so personal to me that for it to just end is tough. But I don't know, life's a trip. That grief group thing seriously helped me emotionally. I was doing it for others, and it maybe use the word cure. Like, it just did a lot for me. So I was actually talked to a guy last night to maybe do something with that next year too. And I picked up, it was cool. I met a bunch of people in Fiji that we have this bond for the rest of our lives that I want to continue to work with and do some trips. It's so interesting to me. It didn't click, but there's people that, like me, of course, that enjoy surfing more than anything, and they've been doing it for an amount of years or whatever, and they're just stuck. And then you start giving them these little pointers. Like, my really good friend Razz had never been barreled before, ever. He's been surfing for 12 years. Razz was in Fiji with his girlfriend. He owns a sailboat there. They've been going there for the past however many years. And he saw me and asked, like, hey, would you do work with me? And I'm like, hey, dude, I'd love to. I'd like a month. Like, I wanted to go surf. And so, like, 2 weeks into it, those waves were bad. It was windy, like I was talking about, and I'd hit the guy Raz up. I'm like, all right, let's do some work, man. And we ended up doing 80 sessions together, and they're about 2 hours, 3 hours each. And he went from having only a certain height that he would surf Cloudbreak at, which was about double overhead, like 4 feet, 8 foot faces, 5 foot, and then would take off and then kick out. Like, one of the things about Cloudbreak, they all look like closeouts, and you immediately go, nope. And that's the moment where you need to hunker down, and you'll either get the long ride or you may end up in a tube. Like, far into it, we had one of the better days of the trip. It was me, him, and my friend Julian that was on a yacht. His yacht was inside the reef. It was the three of us, and it was 6 to 8 foot first ledge, square, perfect as Cloudbreak gets, barreling the whole reef. All you had to do was just take off and you just get barreled, the three of us. So I'm losing it because we're having a session. This was the 4th day of a swell. The first 3 days were junky. I towed with Ben Wilson. Did a lot of towing with the manager in Namotou because no one was there. We could tow. And then there was a lot of wind involved, a lot of big swells. Day 4, I almost didn't even go out. I'm like, the guy Razz texted me. He's like, hey, meet me at 6. I'm like, oh, okay. I meandered, jumped on the ski, came around, and a lot of this, you get into the channel of Tavarua, and there's Cloudbreak a mile out. If it's firing and barreling, you can see, you just watch this edge of white dropping, and it's like you watch anvils hitting the reef. And it was the most surprised I've ever been in my life of surfing, ever. Nothing on the charts, nothing at all showed what this was supposed to be. I brought a 5'5" board. I thought it was going to be head high. And we pull up there. The first wave is him. He's a tall dude. He's like 6'6". He looked like an ant, and the thing was just frickin' cement, just running. I was screaming, ah! And get out there, and Raz like, thank God you're here. It's so much bigger than I thought. And I'm like, oh my God, Raz, this is it. It's freaking fire. And he's like, I'm like, all right, come on. And the first set came in. I'm like, you gotta go. And he paddled, and Cloudbreak does this thing where it lurches, and then it comes at you, backs off, and then dumps. And if you haven't become accustomed to it, it's really easy to paddle out at it and it goes inside of you, or you just don't hunker down into your board and get under the ledge and take off under it, which is super intimidating, but it's the easier spot to take off. There's a couple waves went by. And then Raz took off on one wave, pulled in, did a closeout, came out, and he was so stoked. He's like, I did it. I'm like, what? He's like, I got barreled. I'm like, did you come out? He's like, no. And the guy Julian was there. He's like, I'm all, Raz, did you jump? He's like, yes. I'm like, no. I'm all, Julian, if he didn't jump, would he have made it? He's like, dude, he needed 5 more feet. And I'm like, Raz, number 2 rules, don't close your eyes and don't jump. And I'm like, you cannot, both of those you can't do today. He's like, I'm so stoked, dude. I just want to get barreled. I'm good. This has been great. I'm like, stop. We cannot celebrate. You're going to come out. You're going to get the wave of your life. I think your next wave is going to be a wave of your life. You have to do not jump. Okay. I catch a wave, paddle back out. This set comes in. He lets it go. And I'm like, dude, he's like, I don't know. When you're not here, I can't put myself in that position. I'm like, that's fine. Next wave comes, I'm like, go. And he's like, this one. I'm like, go. He takes off. And you can't see from the back. That's the hard thing of surf coaching, you know, and especially when someone's getting barreled. So the wave goes by, another wave after it, and then I see him like 5 minutes later standing in the reef at Shish Kebabs. And I'm like, oh no, because we haven't had one injury yet with him. Like my big thing was safety there and really choosing waves, because you could push somebody's limits, but at Cloudbreak it can definitely go too far. Yeah. And I'm like, damn it, it happened. You know, like, I guess it's inevitable, but like, I thought that like that was the wave. Like, he got hurt. Standing in there, cruising. Then he goes out to the jet ski, and I was like, oh crap, man. Like, we have an injury, you know, and nobody had really been seriously injured. And because there's no medic around, it was serious. And I don't know if people truly understood that. So I began to paddle from the lineup over. It's a long paddle. It's probably 20 minutes to get over to the mooring. He starts paddling at me, and he meets me, and I look at him, and I'm like, dude, are you okay? And he looks, and he sits up on his board, and he almost starts crying. He's like, it happened. And I'm like, what? I was like, are you okay? He's like, I came out of a barrel. I'm like, no way. He's like, I had to come out here just to tell you. He's like, I'm not going to catch another wave today. I actually don't know when I'm going to catch another wave. He's like, I do not want to ruin this experience. He's like, I honestly I came to terms that I wasn't going to get barreled as a surfer. And you don't know what this has done for me, but this is everything I've ever wanted. And he's like, I'm going home. I'm leaving. He was on a boat nearby. And I'm like, don't. I was like, it's firing. I was like, you could do it again. He's like, nope. I was like, you could catch a wave to this. He's like, nope. He's like, I want to hold on to that moment and this feeling for as long as I can.
Wow.
So he left, and that night, his girlfriend, Mieta, she learned how to drone while she was there. And he's like, Mieta got the wave. I'll send it to you. I'm like, oh, cool. I told Raz, and I hate to say this, I'm like, I'd imagine, it's Cloudbreak. I'd imagine that he pulled up, got a pocket ride, and came out, right? Like, that would be fantastic. That's I think it's the scariest way to get barreled out in the world. He sends this video, takes off, and you can see I'm next to him. It's a whitewater takeoff, goes and backdoors the section, disappears, and gets spit out. Then goes to go into the next section and just was a little low and copped it to the head. And I was literally sitting there like screaming. I'm like, what? And I called him. I'm like, you didn't just get barreled. Like, you freaking got spit out of too. He's like, I told you. I'm like, bro, no offense. None of us thought that is what happened. He's like, I know. And I got on this crazy tangent, but that was really cool to share because so much of this was a personal journey, but I got to work with a few people. And that moment, getting to help somebody get that feeling, it was a life-changing moment. And that's where, moving forward, I'm like, man, I want to make that more a part of my life. I have to remove myself a lot of the time from these sessions, and it's hard at times. But the reward within there is, it's insane. It's one thing to experience all this stuff and have these moments where you're just like, I am the luckiest surfer, luckiest human in the world. But then to be able to facilitate it and elevate somebody so that they understand why I'm 35 and single and did the surf career, it's because this thing still consumes my life. And it's just rad to see it in other people. And it's not that I didn't think it existed, but when you're actually a part of someone's journey, you just emotionally become invested. Like, you feel like they're sensei, and you're worried about their safety, but you want to push it. You want to share what you love the most. And I don't know, this trip for me had so much involved that's so funny. I think we were going to end this podcast, but you guys just got a story about Razz. Razz, I love you. That was freaking rad. One day I'll post that video, and you guys will maybe understand why I'm losing it about it. But
send it to me. At least send it to me.
Yeah. I will. I'll show you the tube.
It's such an unreal. His mindset of like, nope, I'm done. I just want to soak in that is so unreal and foreign to me. All of us want more, but I think he's right. I kind of almost think like he's right to just walk away in that moment and relish it.
Yeah.
It's like, what else do you need? I did it. Let me enjoy it for a minute.
Yeah.
Because it's too easy to run through and just try to overdo it.
That's what I do.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, I think that's a wonderful place to end. Cool. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
As always. And yeah.
Thanks everyone.
Yeah.